This week, President Trump issued an executive order which included some language for proposed emergency price relief for the housing market. It did little to change mortgage rates at this point, and there were no real details given, but we're going to cover some of what was in that order here in a minute. In fact, mortgage rates were pretty much flat last week. The number of people applying for mortgages had another small increase this week, but demand is down year over year. Some good news is there are still more new listings happening for 3 weeks in a row now than either of the previous 2 years, which is great news for our inventory. We're covering all this and much more in this week's market update. My name is Michael. I'm a real estate agent here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and every Monday I give you a weekly update covering all of Dallas and Collin counties as well as the national market. We're looking for trends. We're tracking mortgage rates as well as mortgage purchase applications, as that's our best leading indicator to what demand will look like 30 to 90 days from now. We're looking at things like median list price, days on market, how many homes are having price decreases, what's inventory looking like, and if you stick around until the end, it's my favorite part, the top 10 ranked hottest and coolest cities and zip codes in all of Dallas and Collin counties. If this sounds like something you're into, make sure and hit the subscribe button, and if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, whether it's next week or next year, I'd love to connect. I've helped every one of these yellow dots find their little piece of Texas, and I'd love to help you too. Just call, text, or shoot me an email. All that is in the description below. Okay, today is January 27th. Let's see what the data is telling us. And if this is an old video, you can click the playlist here to get to the latest weekly market update. Okay, let's start with market news. So last Monday was Inauguration Day, and by Monday night, Trump had issued the following memorandum on his executive order tackling inflation and housing relief. Okay, so here it is, delivering emergency price relief for American families and defeating the cost of living crisis. And basically, he outlines how expensive things have gotten. He outlines why he thinks that is. Costs of food, fuel, housing, everything. But what we're looking for here is the housing, which is down here at the bottom. Here it says, moreover, many Americans are unable to purchase homes due to historically high prices, in part due to regulatory requirements that alone account for 25% of the cost of constructing a new home, according to a recent analysis. In sum, unprecedented regulatory oppression from the Biden administration is estimated to have imposed almost $50,000 in costs on the average American household. Whereas my first term agenda, I say people $11,000. Then he says, I hereby order the heads of all executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief consistent with applicable law to the American people and increase the prosperity of the American worker. This shall include pursuing appropriate actions to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply, eliminate unnecessary administrative expensive and rent-seeking practices that increase healthcare costs. I don't know what rent-seeking practices increase healthcare costs. Does anybody know what that is? Eliminate counterproductive requirements that raise the costs of home appliances, create employment opportunities for American workers, including drawing discouraged workers into the labor force. I don't know what that means. And eliminate coercive climate policies that increase the cost of food and fuel. Within 30 days, they have to report to him on what's happened. So this statement was released last Monday, and it had basically no impact on mortgage rates. And it's very difficult to actually know what can be done about any of the things he's saying here. He's saying regulatory requirements account for 25% of the cost of building a house. If that's true, it would be great for that to come down, but I'm pretty sure most of those costs are at the state and local level. I don't know, maybe I just don't know enough about federal administration fees and building houses, but the only fees I'm aware of are more local things. So I'm not sure what this executive order can do to help things at the local level. Maybe one of you knows more about this than I do. If so, please let me know. And then he also says to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply, which again would be great. More supply would definitely make housing less expensive, and more supply is something we've needed for over a decade. But how can you possibly expand housing supply? Like, how is the government going to be able to incentivize home builders? Because home builders are private companies, and they are very efficient sellers. They will never oversupply their market and cause prices to drop. They build exactly the homes they know they can sell while returning the highest profit for their shareholders. Just like all corporations, their goal is always returning the highest profit for their shareholders. So maybe he's going to give builders a tax credit that would increase their margins enough so that they actually can have home prices come down some and still be returning higher profits to shareholders. I don't know how or if that could work. And this is a puzzle I definitely cannot solve, and I'm very thankful I don't have to. So I don't know what can actually be done about those things. But then on the other side of this equation is Trump's tariffs. During Trump's first term, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, his tariffs on Canadian softwoods, Canadian lumber, led to a rise in the cost of lumber for home builders. Back in 2018, the NAHB estimated that the tariffs added nearly $9,000 of lumber costs to building houses. And in fact, the cost of lumber ended up rising like 80% year over year as a result of this. And a part of that was also the rising tariffs caused some lumber mills to shut down entirely, which then created less supply, which of course then drives prices up. So even beyond prices having to be higher because there's a higher tariff, there's also the risk of things shutting down and supply getting lower, which then drives prices up even further. So the point is, I'm not saying tariffs are good or bad, but I'm saying there's also a chance that it's actually going to make building houses more expensive because there are a lot of materials and appliances, garage openers. I mean, a lot of things come from other countries. And as of last Monday evening, the New York Times reported that when asked about his tariffs, he said he was still planning to enact a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico starting February 1st. Then last week, Trump also said he's demanding the Fed cuts rates immediately. And again, that had basically no impact on either the 10-year or mortgage rates. So all we can know for certain right now is Trump has made these statements. Mortgage rates didn't improve at all, and we're just going to have to wait and see what impact, if any of this has on housing affordability. And then, before we move on, I wanted to say be on the lookout for this video. It will probably be up in the next few days. But this is a great little community that I think is getting overlooked because it's in a city a lot of people don't usually hear about. But it's actually a very convenient location with easy highway access. And if you've been looking in places like Aubrey or Little Elm, this will be a much easier drive to get to places like Plano's Legacy West area because the whole drive is on major highways instead of all the back roads with the stoplights of Highway 380. It's only 13 miles from Frisco, a 25-minute drive to Plano's Legacy West, and only 13 minutes to downtown Denton. They've got little patio-style homes for those of you who are okay without a backyard, and you could probably get one of these under $370K right now, and I believe they're offering a 4.99% rate, either that or they're about to. And they've also got homes on normal size lots up to 3,700 square feet with backyards. And I think you could get one of these huge 3,700 square foot ones for about $600K. Otherwise, a smaller single story home, I think you could get somewhere just under $500 now. The taxes here are super low. I believe like 1.6% after your homestead exemption. It's got a community pool, a park, walking trails. Overall, it's just a very nice and pretty affordable community. So be on the lookout for that video. If it's already up by the time you see this, I'll just have a link here to it. But we're going to tour a bunch of the floor plans. And if you're interested in those, just go ahead and call me today. Okay, moving on. Let's start with the national housing inventory. This week we had an increase of 4,462 more homes for sale in the country. This gets us up to 26% more inventory than we had last year, to a total of 636,580 homes available for sale in the country. This same week last year, inventory was only at 503,192, and it was still dropping at that point. So much better start this year. Then for reference, the all-time inventory bottom of 2022, we only had 240,000 homes for sale. The peak of last year, we were all the way up to 740,000 homes for sale. For reference, this same week in 2015, we had about 938,000 homes for sale. So we're getting much closer to that. Now let's look at new listings. This week we had 6,034 more new listings than we had this week last year. So for the third week in a row, and that's this line way up here, so you can see how much higher we are than any of the previous 3 years. But for the third week in a row, we're continuing to have more listings. We had a total of 50,955 new listings. And this is great news. This was some of the best news. The back half of last year was new listings increasing. More and more people are listing their homes again, which means more inventory for you to choose from and less chance of prices running up quickly when rates finally drop again. Now looking at pending sales. This week we actually have 3% fewer home sales than we did last year. We are right in between the previous 2 years. And this is not unusual. The data gets very tight at the beginning and end of the years, but overall this number should continue trending up through May or June. But this week we have 252,400 586 homes under contract in the country. Then the last thing we cover nationally is a percentage of homes having price decreases. Every year it's normal for a third of homes to take a price cut before selling. Looking at the national chart, we're down to 32.96% of homes taking a price cut this week. Last year we got as high as 39.9%. The year before, 39.2, and then in 2022, we got as high as 43.2. So far, we're just right on track with the previous 2 years. And just so you know, if you want home prices to come down, this number will need to be going up. Now, looking at mortgage rates, so last week, that was starting the 21st, we were at a 7.08, and we ended at a 7.11, so almost completely flat. Something to note is we are still 0.16% higher than we were a year ago. And a couple times last week, we were 0.2% higher. And that makes a huge difference on affordability. So what we're gonna talk about next is the mortgage purchase applications. We did have a 2% increase, we did have a 1% increase this week in the number of people applying for mortgages, but you can see we're still down quite a bit year over year, although I will say this data is not that reliable this early in the year. Really, it doesn't mean too much to me until we get to March or April. From then on, it's much more reliable. So, I mean, even here, as you can see, it was up here, and then the next week it was all the way down here, you know? So don't read too much into this yet, but my point is, you have to remember, yes, we're having less people apply for mortgages, but you have to remember mortgage rates are about 0.2% higher than they were last year. So even being close, which we'll see as we get closer to April where we actually are with mortgage demand. But you also need to remember that even though applications were way up here in 2023, there were actually less pending sales happening than when mortgage demand was here. In fact, most of last year, mortgage demand was way lower than 2023, but pending sales were way up. So the intention got much higher of people applying for mortgages to actually contracting. And I think that's going to continue into 2025. So don't read too much into this yet. And remember, the context is rates are 0.2% higher, which has a huge impact on affordability. But also the people applying are getting more and more intentional as time goes on. Oh, and I wanted to give you context just so you can see how this data line went last year with rates between 6.75 to 7.5%, because we're still in that range. When we were in that range last year, we had 14 negative weeks, meaning a negative print. We only had 2 positive and 2 flat. So currently rates are at 7.1%, right in the middle of that range. So we should not be expecting the number of people applying for mortgages to grow with rates where they are. Again, that was 14 negative, 2 positive, and 2 flat. So if we stay in that same range that we're in now, we're gonna expect it to look pretty similar to what last year looked like. Not a ton of demand. And I've been saying it for more than a year now. I still believe this is true. There's no reason to believe mortgage demand is gonna grow significantly with rates anywhere near here. The real demand is going to come once they get and stay below 6% for a sustained period of time. The evidence we have for that is new construction has been offering 3.99 to 5.5 rates for a long time, and they've been selling much better than pre-existing homes. Okay, now we're moving on to the local markets, starting with the MLS data of Dallas County. This week we had 598 new listings. That's down 5 from last week. We had only 172 closings, which is down 60 from last week. But remember, these are the homes that contracted basically the week of or after Christmas, somewhere between Christmas and New Year's. So not a lot of contracts were happening then. We see it right now in a 60 less drop in closings this week. The number of those homes that closed, only 21 were immediate sales, meaning they contracted within the first week. Same reason, that was a holiday week. This week, however, we had 9 fewer contracts. We're down to 268, which is not surprising considering we went up 40 and 54 the previous 2 weeks. And then in total, there are 1,918 homes either under contract or pending, and that is 125 more than last week. Moving on to Collin County, we had 382 new listings. That's 88 less new listings. That's kind of surprising. We had 140 closings, which is 51 less. Again, holiday week, although we had 17 immediate sales happening back then, which is 4 more than last week. Again, that just means they contracted within the first week of listing. We had 175 new contracts. That's 4 more than last week. And in total, 1,519 homes either under contract or pending status. That's 130 more. So overall, it was kind of a stagnant week, both in Dallas and Collin County, and a lot of that just has to do with rates. Okay, moving on to the market action index. If you've never seen it, it just takes into account all this data, puts it into one easy to read graphic with a number. Anything a 30 or below is a buyer's market. Above a 30, we're asking how much of a seller's market are we in. Currently in Dallas County, we're still slowly heating up. We are up to a 37, which is still just a slight seller's advantage. You can see it looks like we bottomed out maybe early December, and we've been climbing since, which is different than what you're going to see in Collin County in a minute. But median list price actually, for the first time in a while, had a small tick up. You can see where it bottomed out here in December. And again, that's just 1 week data. It could come right down and continue sideways, but the median price of new listings has clearly been having a larger jump. You can see average days on market has been pretty flat the last few weeks. Median is still at 77. Number of homes having price decreases is continuing to decline, which again, if you want prices to come down, you would need that to be going up. It usually doesn't until later in the year anyway, when a lot more homes get listed. And then 12% of homes are relisted. Again, people who had listed before, they are ready now to list. There are more and more people listing their homes. Inventory, same with the national. It looks like it may have bottomed for the year at the beginning of January. So inventory is climbing. We're having lots of new listings. That's great for us in our market. And the market action index still kind of going sideways, really. Okay, moving on to Collin County. Collin County has still not found a bottom, at least for their overall median list price. We did have a jump the last 2 weeks in the median price of new listings, and their average days on market has been slowly dropping, though their median had a drop. That's very interesting because you don't really see it here in the average. But number of homes having price decreases, pretty flat around here. But you can see it's definitely a different market than Dallas, where Dallas weeks ago looks like it found its bottom for pricing. Number of homes having a price decrease is still going down in Dallas, whereas here it's pretty much sideways. I wouldn't call that up. Inventory climbing as well, same as the national market and Dallas, and their market action index is right about to the bottom. Yeah, 35.1, so this has just been straight sideways, up and right back down to the bottom, whereas Dallas obviously has heated up some and is going sideways off the bottom. So very interesting to see how different these two markets are. Okay, moving on, let's take a quick look at pending sales. You can see this little black line here. We are having more pending sales, which again, this matters because there are less people applying for mortgages, yet there are quite a few more pending sales. You can see then in 2023, we only had 992. Well, that week, let's go to this week. We had 1,125, whereas today we have 1,537. That is a lot more homes pending, even though we have less people applying for mortgages than both of those years. And then looking at Collin County, the same. Collin County is way above, and this of course is because Collin County is the number 2 fastest growing county by the number of people in the country. So they are always growing and growing right now. So every year you're gonna see these big jumps up until it stops, and I don't know when that's gonna be. But that's a lot more sales happening than the last 2 years, and that's good news. Then we're moving on to our hottest and coolest cities and zip codes, our top 10 ranked charts. These are ranked using that same market action index number we just talked about. Remember, 30 or below is a buyer's market. So this week we had a bunch of small changes. Carrollton and Ferris remained at number 1 and 2. Then Grand Prairie heats up 1, Richardson cools off 1. Plano heats up 1, Louisville cools off 1, Coppell remains, Grapevine heats up 1, Seagoville cools off 1, and then Allen remains the number 10 on the hottest cities list. Then we like to zoom in on specific zip codes. The absolute hottest is 75007 in Carrollton. That's a 49.09, followed by Grand Prairie 75051, Plano 75093, Grand Prairie 75052, Plano 75074, Plano 75025, Grand Prairie 75050, Carrollton 75006, Irving 75060, and Ferris 75125, which you can see Ferris looks to be heating up. Most of these are just doing kind of a slight curve up. Then moving on, same thing but the coolest cities and zip codes. Blue Ridge cools off to number 1 and Leonard heats up to number 2, so they switch places. Then Sunnyvale and Lavon remain at 3 and 4. Anna cools off 1, Van Alstyne heats up 1, Rockwall cools off 1, Nevada jumps onto the list at number 8, and then Salina and Royce City remain at 9 and 10. And Red Oak, which was number 7 last week, heated up entirely off the list this week. So remember, Lavon and up, these are the official city buyers markets. But when we zoom into the specific zip codes, we have a few more buyers markets. So starting with the absolute coolest is Blue Ridge 75424, then Leonard 75452, Dallas 75219, Sunnyvale 75182, Lavon 75166, Rockwall 75032, Anna 75409, Van Alstyne 75495, Grand Prairie 75054, and Nevada 75173. Remember, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I would love to connect. Just call, text, or shoot me an email. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.